Welcome to episode 12 of the Liminal Space podcast. This is Tristan.
This is Rashid.
And today we're going to say yeet.
Crazy.
I still don't know what yeet means, but hopefully by the end of this episode, we'll have a understanding.
That's what we're going to be talking about.
That's basically the intentions.
So we got officially the youngest guests we've had on the podcast. But they are in their 20s, so they're not
The
so
youth
old.
of the nation, yeah.
Youth of the nation. So a couple of years ago, I started volunteering at BottomUp, which is the organization Ashley and Alian leads, which the two people we interviewed a couple of episodes ago. And I met a bunch of teenagers on that program where we were doing public speaking skills for a public speaking festival. And one of the teenagers was Taahirah, who's here with us today. And we'll be speaking to Taahirah and Ra-eesha about things that the youth are interested in.
Ra-eesha Smith is an undergraduate psychology student with a strong interest in understanding human behavior and promoting mental well-being. Outside of academics, she is passionate about creating awareness about and addressing social injustices and inequality. With this aim in mind, she is a youth mobiliser at BottomUp, where she assists in facilitating social justice-oriented events and workshops. Ra-eesha also uses her social platforms, especially TikTok, to create content that creates awareness on critical social issues, advocating for justice and equality. She is also a freelance photographer and aspiring writer, especially poetry. She enjoys singing, learning languages, and exploring new hobbies.
Taahirah Hoosain is a visual artist based in Cape Town, South Africa, specialising in alternative style photography. Taahirah has completed a diploma in photography at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Her work explores the intersection of identity, culture, and self-expression, as well as challenging conventional beauty standards and the structures that uphold them. Outside of her studies, Taahirah volunteers as a youth mobiliser at BottomUp, facilitating social justice events and workshops aimed at youth development. She also enjoys painting, music, singing, and creative makeup. Through her art and activism, she is committed to empowering marginalised voices and fostering an inclusive community. So welcome you two.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
So cool to have you with us.
We are excited.
No longer as teenagers, just to confirm. That was years ago, and now adults.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So as a starting point for the conversation, we always like to ground it in location. Quite maybe boringly, we're at my house again in Claremont. But you both are not from Claremont.
No.
Could you share maybe a little bit about where you're from?
Yeah, so we're from Mitchell's Plain, specifically Mitchell's Plain. It can be chaotic there, and even getting an Uber is quite difficult because the Uber drivers will always tell us, "Oh, I never come here." So there's to be honest, like the views on Mitchell's Plain and Taahirah specifically sort of outgrew the actual reality of it, because I mean it is dangerous, but not to the extent that people thinking. Like in the daytime you can walk around, it's fine. Yeah. But yeah, so just to be safe, I think it would be better to not have it there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I live in Taahirah right now, but I'm originally from Philippi East, and then I moved around in Mitchell's Plain. So I moved to East Ridge, and then to Ottery, and then now I'm back living in Taahirah in Mitchell's Plain.
And you both stay at the same address, but in a different house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you share? And then it's also, I guess, about how you know each other. It's also helpful.
Yeah, so we live in our house, and then next door, but not next door, because it's on the same plot. They have like a little piece built on, like a little house for them.
Who's the them?
Me and my husband.
Taahirah and her husband, yes. My brother and Taahirah.
There comes the story.
Now the truth comes out.
Yeah, so we are sister-in-laws.
Okay, sweet.
Although we don't even say the in-law part, we just say sisters.
Usually, I have a biological sister, but usually I'm just like my sisters.
Yeah. People always can't be that's not true.
Yeah.
How can you guys be sisters? Stop looking for family.
And why did people think you weren't sisters?
Are you probing me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, we are. What's that chocolate ice cream?
Top dick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I'm explaining race relations to you guys in chocolate terms. So
Thank you.
very light
Someone's
work.
Milky Bar and someone's no, full chocolate.
Anyway, cool.
I'm really grateful that I met Taahirah because
Aww.
yeah, even her being there actually made me and our other sister also more closer. So we sort of have this little community of sisterhood that grew out of Taahirah coming into our lives. So that's pretty cool.
That's cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Another question we ask our guests at the start of our recordings is about stories that either ground you, we say stories that ground you, or stories that help you navigate your world, the world. And wondered what that might be for either or both of you.
The stories that ground me are everyday stories, things that I notice or read or hear about. And one in particular that comes to mind is last year sometime, Taahirah had an assignment where she had to interview a local hero. So Taahirah and I would go to the library often.
I'm ready to help with any questions or topics.
Google's listening.
Because she said assignment.
Yeah.
Must do an assignment.
Yeah.
Say what's
Because
on your mind.
I'm ready to help. That's hectic now, bro. When I turn Siri
That's
off
kinda
here, what's
scary.
going on?
Yeah, so we would walk often to the library there, Tafelzig Library, and we would walk past this garden. Because Tafelzig is such a place of destruction and violence, seeing this garden like sort of brought us peace, and we would often admire it walking to the library. And we would usually just see one old man like working away in that garden. It can be like 4 o'clock, sun hot, and he's working in the garden with his rakes and water and whatever. So Taahirah had this assignment where she had to interview a local hero, and then that man came to mind. And the stories that he told about the origin of the garden, the present of the garden, and even the future of the garden, it really stuck a chord with me. And at some points I was crying, I'm not gonna lie, because it made me think of my late grandpa, who also had a garden. And so he spoke about the reasons behind the garden and how it brings the community together. It even brings the children off the street. Everyone in that community knows that that is the garden. Don't mess with the garden. And even the gangsters respect the garden. So that was interesting to me. He basically said that the garden is a form of worship for him and a way to connect with his faith. And that was really profound, because that made me think of my grandpa and how he was a really religious man, and the kindest man I've ever known. And he would wake up at 5 a.m. or even at dawn, and he would water his plants every single day.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that like hit me listening to that story. And then also the story of the future, which is like they said they want to grow the garden further, make it really nice, put benches in, and even one day have vegetables and stuff, so that there'll be communal food. And that was really interesting, and that's something that grounds me even now. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Do you think that is maybe like a symbol of hope?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a symbol of hope, because most of the people that are working on it are men in their 60s to 80s. And I think they obviously went through apartheid. They were probably freedom fighters or whatever. And forced removals happened. They were
Exactly.
sent to like areas that, that were designated colored areas. And now they're in places that are predominantly violent. So yeah, I think that this garden is a little piece of hope, a little piece of like an oasis in a desert. Yeah, and I think that brings them peace and makes something that wouldn't necessarily be home. Yeah.
We often talk about how the way Cape Town has been set up, has been imagined. Obviously, the closer you are to the mountain, there's literally like streams and rivers and stuff flowing off the mountain. So naturally, you have a lot of greenery, even from, you know, the underground water sources and those kind of things. And then part of the thing of the Cape Flats is that it was always known as a dry, arid area, very sandy area as well. So I guess there probably was always fynbos and those kind of things that did grow there and that have always grown in parts of the Cape Flats. But also thinking of that significance, you described it as like an oasis in the desert. Like even in terms of like literally the geography of it, it's not a place that's known for having trees and plants and shrubs or whatever you want to call it. So that's also so cool as well. It's like from that place, it's like, actually, no, we'll still do it ourselves. We'll still, you know.
Yeah, I think that also grounds it in this idea of hope. Because obviously I just thought like, okay, this is like a community member that is doing a garden. But when you listen to the story, you're reminded that at every point we are still being resilient. And like our people or people of color are always making things happen with nothing. Because even like how this happened, it was like people were bringing together plants and planting them. People were putting in their time to kind of build this thing. And yeah, I agree that it is like an oasis, but it's also something to question, because I've had this thought about how in black and colored communities there are almost no trees. And to me that is something that is necessary. And also I desire those things, because it isn't fair that there's concrete, like even like this idea of like concrete in terms of like people like to pave and like do these things, like in some ways, okay, that makes sense for whatever reason, but those ideas are also forced onto us in terms of like houses made of concrete and stuff like that. Like industrialization happens and you just kind of have to go with it, but it's actually there are so much other types of architecture and agriculture that you can implement that is also native to Africa, that helps the environment. And so even like when you think about these forced removals and the houses that we were put in, or the schools that we were put in where there's asbestos roofs, and even till this day, like me in high school, still having those roofs or actually having no ceilings, things are wrong, very wrong with the society that we live in.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's almost like the concrete and stuff, it almost like separates you from the land, like from nature and stuff. I just think of it now as well.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of the African architecture is actually with the land.
You just might take the mud, bro, and then you build these.
And it makes sense for the climate, for the whatever. Like so it's frustrating when you think about it, you know.
How people love a concrete backyard, you know.
Oh, like it's so annoying.
I mean, when you were talking, I was thinking about like what that state that people are into. You go to school with asbestos roofs, no ceilings. You go home, there's no trees or vegetation or what. What does that do to people? Do we miss out on something as human beings when that...
I think so.
I think so. For me, I believe the spirit needs to be connected to nature in some way. Otherwise, we are removed from that, and it can cause everyone now, not everyone, that's a generalization, but people are struggling mentally and emotionally, and I think that we are not grounded. And to be grounded, we need to be in nature. We need to be taken away from this environment of concrete and technology, and just everything is so, like, everything is to make money or whatever it may be, but people are not connecting with nature. And I think that is why, like, when we go to the beach or to the mountains, we feel the serenity, this peace. And I think it's really important to have nature to be able to be at peace and have this internal balance, because right now a lot of us are just imbalanced.
Do you have, as people are in their 20s, do you have a grounding practice, like something that reconnects you in that kind of way that you describe is needed?
I love to go to the beach. I think that's for Taahirah as well. We often go together.
Which beach, for intersect?
The one that, either to Strandfontein or the one that's literally walking distance from us.
Okay.
But
we live in a beachfront neighborhood.
Beach? Oh, yeah. Okay.
We live near the beach.
Beachfront neighborhood in Manandi, you know.
Yeah,
we literally just have to go out of our...
Go out of our
Anyway,
yard.
I mean, like, okay, I also wanted
We
to
just can't go with our phones.
and they will be...
We're good.
No, yeah.
But yeah, it's we go to the beach often. I love swimming and connecting with nature in that way. I also love to go to the mountains or that, and sometimes just a picnic or just sitting outside. Sometimes because I do struggle with anxiety, I would just go sit in the yard and there's sand there and there's ground. Yes, there's mostly
The
sand because
notorious sand.
unfortunately that is the Cape Flats. It's mostly sand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's still the land, right?
Yeah, still, exactly.
So I go there and I just sit until, I'm grounded. So yeah, I do think that.
Talk to
That's
us about you studying psychology,
Hmm.
and you mentioned now that anxiety is a thing for you.
Hmm.
But both of you were speaking about mental health in your communities and how that is seen. And I just wondered what people make of this kind of conversation where you saying, oh, we must be grounded and you go and swim and all that kind of thing. Like when you say that to your family or friends or what's it like?
I don't think they use the same language, and I don't think that I have these conversations really with them about the way you can take care of yourself, because I think at the point that I'm at in having conversations, it's really about, what's the word?
Like naming.
Yeah, like I'm still working on them naming that there's an issue. Yeah.
I think especially in the colored community, that's the context I know, so that's the only one I can speak from. They literally demonize mental illnesses. And when I say literally, I mean they literally call, like, if you have depression or anxiety, it's a demon, It must be a demon. You need to be... what jinn? You need to be mantraed out or... what's the other word for it? Where a priest has to... Exercise you, yes.
Exorcism.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Exercise.
Exercise.
Oh.
The priest is supposed to run in the gym, it'll come out.
It doesn't sound that bad.
You would be looked at as if you are a loon if you say, like, you need to connect with nature, like, and they'll be like, that's okay, I'm just spitting out here, but like, oh, that's white people stuff, like to meditate or whatever like that. So the topic of mental health is quite stigmatized, especially amongst the older generation. But I think nowadays, like, younger people, even teenagers, are trying to really bring that to the fore, because I think they really are struggling. And the elders we see that they are struggling, but they just brush it. They just brush it off or shove it under the rug, whatever. I suffer from anxiety, right? And like a lot of my family also do. And so there was a point where one of my family members were like, I don't know where you guys get it from, because it's not from my family. And then I was like naming like the names of the things that there was literal, I don't know if I can say this, but like psychotic episodes or like a really neurosis that was very much present in certain situations that I can recall from back in the day and up until now. And then they were like, oh. So yeah, I think they just they look at the stuff and they ignore it, or they're like, oh, they're just going through it, a phase or whatever. But they don't really take it serious. And I think that's really terrible, because it can lead to not only like the worst things, which is suicide, but it can lead to passing it on to your kids, and like then it's never getting healed, it's never getting addressed.
Yeah, I think also the thing about like going to the beach and grounding yourself, like I think like even the relationship that some of like colored families have with the beach is really like, it's a family outing, and it's kind of like this thing where it's like, okay, we're gonna spend time together now. And even that idea is actually also troubling, because from my upbringing, a part of it was like, that doesn't really make any sense if you're just saying like, oh, we're going to spend time together, but like you're just doing it for show then. And so then it's like you can't also have these conversations when everything is like superficial, when you're going to the beach or you're going on an outing only because the children has to go out like a little bit so that the world can see.
Yeah, even the idea of the beach being an outing means like it's not a part of our daily lives. Like, if you notice, we often go to Leon and Ashley for like meetings or whatever, and we would drive down the beach road and we would literally just see people 5 a.m. at the beach, just
Yeah.
like taking a stroll, and it's just a normal day for them. And for us, it's like once in a while thing. Like, so it's become this outing when it should be like a part of your daily life.
That's what I was also thinking about earlier, is that like how violent it is that we pushed to the ends of like our city, and then also
Yes.
people are allowed to connect just because of the color of their skin. They're allowed to connect with nature or have like access to certain things, whereas us is like, firstly, we are the backbone of the economic system here because we the workers, like our parents are the workers, and then we can't even take a break. You have to be kidding me.
Yeah.
That thing of being in Cape Town, I'm so upset that digital nomads can just come here and enjoy Cape Town. Meanwhile, I've been living here for 26 years and I still don't experience the same Cape Town that they do.
Yeah.
Or the same Cape Town that people from the upper class do. I've never been on a cable car and like experience those kind of things.
Even the museum.
For the
the
first time
museums
this
that
year,
the city has.
yes, for the first time this year I went to the aquarium and these are just like, oh, I went to Cape Town last year.
Yeah, and then they found all the hidden
Cape
spots.
Town is so cheap.
And we
Oh my
are
God.
Secret beaches and
Yes, and I'm like, wow, I've never been to that beach. And they'll be like, oh, Cape Town is so cheap. And I'm like, really? I'm struggling to survive, but it's for you, like, it's
so
cheap.
crazy.
cheap.
So
You're gonna
cheap.
pop up and buy me an apartment here in the back.
Soft life.
No, it's crazy. And obviously, like with the digital nomads and stuff, there's also the reality that our government, our local
Yes.
government,
That. Yeah.
the DA,
Yes.
the DA,
They're doing it.
yeah, they're welcoming it. It's part of
Yeah.
like the imagination.
Even
and-
having an expo.
yeah, I even heard Tristan's friend, Mayor Yale Lewis.
he's definitely not my friend.
Nah, like I heard him say something the other day and talking about the digital nomads because that's obviously like a big thing. So he was like, nah, the thing is like they're earning way more than any South African or any Cape Townian because people were complaining about the price of rent now, and he's like, listen, they earn R1 million a year, so they're not on the same level as you. You're not competing with the same
Yes.
with the same properties and stuff, right? And he was like, nah, I'm chill, bro. I stay in. Shame we're calling him out there, but anyway, he's like, nah, bro, I'm chill. Like, I stay in Edgemead. Like, it's just a chill, the humble home. So I'm like, bro, like, don't fool us. Just don't take us for fools, you know.
Yeah.
Also, even this idea of why is the rent in Cape Town, especially in the inner city, catering to, you know,
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
them.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't it, and why is our salary so low that we can't afford to live
Yeah.
in the inner city?
That's crazy.
And why is it at the point, and even that they come here with their dollars and everything is cheap for them and they push everything up for us.
Yeah.
So like everything is expensive for us, but for them it's cheap and they can afford it, like it's cheap for them. And even some of them say, oh, they are working class in America, they come here and they middle class, you know, living this
Exactly.
soft life. So
Yeah.
it's easy to say, yes, they're from a different tax bracket or whatever, but then literally that's the point. Like they are causing everything to go up for us. And we who's been living here and who initially, like back in the day, like generations back, were living in Cape Town, like in the inner city, now push towards the Cape Flats or the outer skirts of Cape Town. We can't live there.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's great. I actually had I saw someone use the name the other day. They said they were like, to be honest, Cape Town's actually Little Europe. And then I was like,
Oh my God.
I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
And I literally like, I can't actually unsee it now. Everywhere I go, I almost giggle to myself. I'm like, bro, it is actually, it's crazy.
Colonize.
Yeah, I was just about to
Hashtag.
say it's just like a little hub for the colonizers to hang
Given
out.
colonization.
Well, I mean, they did try.
I mean, we were a
literally-
hub, sorry.
They did literally try to make it a little Europe when they came here and colonized.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's interesting the
Settled
story
here.
of that garden that you're talking about in Mitchell's Plain and the company garden, the company's garden, as two different examples of what gardens were. So that the British came and they set up these gardens wherever they colonized as the sense of order
But
that they were bringing civilization,
Yeah.
and that was their state. And it's weird in Cape Town because that's still there unquestioned. We don't really,
Yeah.
it's not a problem. It's actually, even in some of the marketing things, it's like, this is part of
Cape Town.
our rich history
Yeah.
of whatever.
Yeah.
Even
right?
go enjoy the
You
garden.
know,
Yeah.
you know what is funny to me? Because I saw this TikTok of like this white guy advertising a kramat. That was like peak like
I
weirdness.
saw the
Because
people
like, what are you saying?
great.
like-
What, like one of the, like an influencer type person.
No, I
Is
think
it
he like
English-
oh
South
no, I think
African
yeah,
guy,
but I
yeah.
think he owned like his family owns the. Because it's like on it's usually like a cemetery or something like that. Not usually, but it's like a grounds, and he's just like the rich like Cape Malay people
Yeah.
and I'm just like
I think he's like a local historian.
yeah,
or
but
something. I
it
saw that.
feels weird to hear
Yeah.
that coming from
It's
you.
like, bro, yeah, it's crazy.
Maybe I shouldn't say that.
Maybe,
on here.
well,
No,
maybe
no,
talk to
it's
us
fair.
about your,
Yeah,
in our pre-recording, you were talking about your faith life, and you were talking about, well, maybe Rashid would call it decolonized. There's like, it's not a decolonized, Rashid talks about decolonized worship
yeah.
quite a lot.
Interesting.
Interesting.
But Tristan doesn't like the word decolonial.
Why?
He said, what was it now? Yo,
No,
this
this
guy
is not
talks
going on the
nonsense,
recording.
actually,
We're not talking
No, we're
about
keeping this. He says what did you say? He says he's
I
post-decolonial.
was joking.
Now-
well, because
He's
I,
post-decolonial.
you know why? Because, you know, like on other episodes, then Rashid says, oh, you were using a word that's been captured. I feel like the word decolonial has been captured. Not everything is decolonized this, decolonized that.
yeah, it's
And
kind
as
of
soon
like
as you have, even in the university spaces, all of a sudden the universities are also saying,
oh
like today,
deco-
they're actually the Stellenbosch vice chancellor is retiring or something, and he's talking about how like transformation happened under his watch or whatever, you know. And it's just like when those.
Imagine.
So now the word transformation as well. I'm like, I can't
No,
trust
that
what
word,
that means.
no, bro, that word. Yeah.
So like even with decolonization, that's all I'm saying. is
Yeah.
with
yeah, we're
decolonization,
hearing you out
sometimes
and we
I'm
hear
like,
you.
but we do need a word to describe the process.
The reason why, if I can advocate for still
Yourself.
using decolonizing, the reason why I find it helpful is because I like to think about imagination, right? And I like to talk about and think about, like, we were just talking about Cape Town, Little Europe, and I like to think about that's the colonial imagination. So
Yes.
we live in a colonially imagined city, which
True.
obviously, like, we laughing about things, but it's also not okay. Like, it's
Yeah.
terrible, it's disgusting, it's unjust. It's been a very successful colonially imagined city, right?
Yes.
So I like to be like,
Yes.
I want to acknowledge and I want to, I
Yes.
guess, recognize
Yeah.
that the city is colonially imagined.
Yes.
So I'm looking at that colonial imagination and I'm wanting to
Yeah.
obviously decolonize it or
Yeah.
to replace it with a better imagination. So what I find helpful, I do also like to talk about decolonization and reimagination as like part of the same sort of story.
Yeah.
Because it's not just decolonization is not just saying everything that's
Yeah.
colonial is like evil and just like trying to tear things down.
Yeah.
Part of that process is also then, like I said, if I'm framing it as a colonially imagined city, what would a indigenous imagined city be? A city that acknowledges the humanity of everyone. How could we imagine that? You know.
Yes.
And for me, it's also necessary that we acknowledge that it's already a colonial imagined one,
Yes.
so we can then create the better one.
I think
so
it's
that's
a matter
my-
of what my thing is, like we already know that, but like the
But
the
not
reality
everyone
is-
does.
Well, but I'm saying the people having this conversation, the four of us in the room,
Yeah. Okay.
like when we're talking about it, we're clear. Like I want to talk about, because when you say decolonize, you're still having colonization in the
I
word.
was
even.
literally just gonna say
So
that.
I'm like, is there not a way? I hate that there isn't a way to talk about the other thing.
Yes, like
That
it's
we
always,
first have to go here. I hate that that's the case. I'm almost like,
why do we
because
have
this
to?
is so, sorry, I'm in
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
heard it. I
Yeah,
heard it.
decoloniality it's meant to like break down what was past and create a new thing, but then we're still even using the word coloniality or colonization in the term of decolonization. Yeah. What were we even talking?
we were going to talk about.
You were talking about faith.
We were talking about faith. I
and
was trying to get to
heritage.
the story about like the way people say prayers or sing.
Yeah, it was to do with like teaching or connecting back to my own culture and like it also connects to identity because the way that the supplication is said or recited, it is like it was born in Cape Town, and kind of like the way it's called Karinkel. The melody of it's called that, and it was born here. And so I'm really introducing myself to this form of application and listening to it, and obviously connecting and grounding myself. There's an experience that colored Muslims in Cape Town have, and I'm not connected with that in that specific way. And I think that's okay in terms of like, obviously, whatever happens in my life, it had to happen. But also, you kind of feel disconnect. And because I grew up in many households in many places, and when there was a structure for me, it was kind of toxic. So I'm like trying to get to the things that are important to me and is positive, I would say, and just bring myself back to myself, who I am.
Do you want to say more about like why that journey now? Like what's happening for you that is the kind of this rediscovery almost that you're going through?
I think I've always grappled with my identity and not being connected, because even when I was politicized and then I was learning about Pan-Africanism, I'm like, I have no like connection to like my people in terms of like what grounds me and who I am. Because often it's like, okay, I'm quote unquote colored. There's a lot of uncertainty in that, and also you always like in the middle of everything and like not knowing where you are. And then also you taught this patriotism to being colored, or like being proud about being colored, but like the things that they're showing us is not necessarily positive in a way. Like if you look at like passion gaps or like
Maybe explain what a passion gap is.
passion gaps are when people extract 4 teeth on top or at the bottom. Usually people do either or all. And so also like what also grounded me in remembering growing up, like my father talking about the struggle for freedom in South Africa, and also making a point to mention colored freedom fighters and saying like, oh, that Ashley Kirill was named by Nelson Mandela in his speech when he addressed the nation, like because he was part of Ikonto Sizwe. And I'm just like, those are like bits of stories that I have, but it isn't something that like grounds me and holds me, and it's like definitive in saying like this is who you are. It's kind of like stories from all over, and that's how I feel, because I've also been all over and I've not had one true upbringing. So I started with this because obviously faith is important, and it's like this connection with God, a higher being, which also grounds you and is also important. And so faith brings that, and like also understanding my religion and how that set of values can influence the way my life is, or how I live my life.
I think also with colored identity, like knowing that since our ancestors were slaves, their identity was attempted to be stripped away by their slave masters. So they were given like surnames, right, after their slave masters, or like the month of that they were brought here. So I think that supplication that Taahirah spoke about, like I read about the origin of it, was especially that rhythm of it, or the rhythm that is so Cape Townian about it, is that it was done in that way because they were prohibited from practicing and from praising. So they would do it in a rhythmic way so that the slave masters would actually think that they're singing, but then they were actually worshipping. Yeah.
There's this weird thing. I think it was obviously during apartheid. There was actually this split from the. Now we always talking about the colonial government. But there was this split in designations of so-called colored people, where there was colored people and then there was Cape Malay people. And even today, some people will talk about, hey, I'm colored. Other people will say, no, I'm Cape Malay, right? Usually, colored people would possibly be Christian or something like that, and Cape Malay people will be Muslim. So it's almost like religion is that like the divide or the separator.
It's so weird, actually.
Yeah, so what I've now discovered, I was looking into my wife's ancestry. I like checking ancestry and those kind of things. And I found out, so from her mom's side, the Rhoda family. And the Rhoda family, I found out they're like in Somerset West. I actually went quite far back and I saw, there was actually like a single ancestor who was a Rhoda. And the interesting thing about that, I know my wife's family are Christian, most of the family, and they were told that they know that there's also a Muslim side of the family, which goes back, I don't know if it was maybe a great-grandfather or something, and then some of the family is Muslim, some of the family is Christian, something along those lines. And I'm like, but that's so weird that now you're talking about, oh, there's the colored family, the Christian ones, and now the Muslim family are, no, we Cape Malay. I think what I struggle with, because Taahirah, what you were talking about, like that, it's almost like that fragmenting thing where you like, okay, there's stories and there's bits and pieces here and there, but it can be a little bit fragmenting in terms of identity and stuff. So I almost feel like there's also some truth telling with things like that, where maybe in an acknowledgement as well that like something like religion, if religion is brought into the story, that still means we have the same ancestors, with the same blood.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And those kind of stories as well. So maybe just some reflections on that.
I think also like that terms, firstly it's problematic, like the obviously it's all just to separate, the same like what they did with tribalism. They just try to separate us all, separating us from divide and conquer. I don't even think in Mitchell's Plain people use the term Cape Malay that often, but I think with Cape Malay I have noticed that it's mostly Muslims that call themselves that, but then I think if you're going to use the actual origin of the word, which is like descendants of Malay people, that would be most of Cape Town coloureds, because that is where we come from. But I think like people who refer to themselves Cape Malay or it's like the traditions that they are keeping. Like they are more in tune with like what was originally done in terms of like the Cape Malay choirs or the foods that they make. Just the culture, trying to keep that tradition or the heritage. And I think a lot of that sadly is dying out now. So even that is like losing a part of our identity. And it's so, being so-called colored is really difficult, because like we have all these pieces of ancestry and we just don't know how to connect it all together. And unfortunately within the colored community there's also this, it's a learned behavior, but and they won't admit it, but it's very obvious that there's this need to be in this close proximity to whiteness. So they will like people will often say, oh, I have European ancestors or whatever, but then I mean colored people are mixed. So people will not want to admit that we have Xhosa or Zulu ancestors or Nguni ancestors. So they will try to just tie their identity to either Cape Malay or whiteness, and they will forget the other parts of it, which is also a part of who we are.
Of course, The thing that I just find a bit strange, like about that, is that especially the African ancestries, especially like the San and Khoi, and as well as Xhosa and Zulu and other ancestries, like those are actually tied to land. So to me, I'm like, bro, and I'm not necessarily talking about a political thing. There's a lot of political conversations about land and Cape Town and those kind of things, but more just like maybe going back to some things we were talking about in the beginning of the conversation about that connection, that embodied connection to land, to sand. I love what you said. You were like, but sand is also part of creation or part of nature. And I was like, actually, it's beautiful, And thinking about those things, like maybe that's part of why we feel, and I'm speaking generally as a we, feeling a bit disenfranchised or dislocated, because we haven't fully been leaning into all of the parts and realizing that if I acknowledge my Khoi ancestry, which I do try and do, I still take my genetics test.
I still want to do one of those.
But my dad, we'll talk about that again. But that ancestry, all of a sudden I'm going to the mountain or to the beaches you were talking about, and I see these plants here growing in the sand, the fynbos and the different indigenous plants, and I'm like, that hits differently, and it's such a beautiful thing. And then it almost fills up, or maybe what I'm starting to do is also not looking at those fragments as something that's less than. The mix is not hybridity in like a negative sense. It's not less than, but it all adds to a complete picture. So you can be fully this and fully that, rather than bitchy pieces of everything,
In the academics,
Fully
they would
human.
say, I think in the civil rights movement as well, they spoke about that idea of remembering, bringing together
all the members of
these
that's
fragmented things.
very
What
cool.
I was wondering as you were speaking is about like similar to a question earlier, if we have a group of people living in the state of, what is it called? Fragmentedness or something. And not a way, like some of what Taahirah was describing of like, not having a way of doing the work that maybe Taahirah is doing now, but actively going, but you just kind of left there. You don't have anything to draw on, to feel like you belong anywhere in particular. Then maybe the logical conclusion is that there is a state of violence and disorientation and, you know, as a people, we don't have people speaking for us. Those kinds of things probably make sense, then it would be like that.
Yeah, I think even like when we were talking about where we position geographically, like that's violence, that we are not closer to nature. And then also it's violent because now you have a people that essentially don't have the sense of being and purpose in a way. Then capitalism comes and it's like, okay, you have to work to eat, and if you don't work, you'll just die. And so that's also violent because it's like, you know, people go like not eating or like worrying about what they're going to eat or feed their children because they don't have work, because the job market is crazy and people basically want you to be slaves.
Yeah.
And maybe that speaks to the idea of like internalized oppression. So we were talking about hair earlier on, and how there are these rules about hair in a colored community that is, I mean, it's pretty intense about it. And I wondered maybe you wanted to share some of your hair. We can all share. We all have hair stories.
Hair stories. Interlude.
For me, I've actually like written pieces about this also. So throughout my life, my hair was, I'm gonna use the word policed because that is what it was. Even the term relax is wild if you think about it.
Yeah,
like
relax.
There's nothing relaxing about the process.
It's too much. We need to relax it. But yes, so throughout my life, my hair was relaxed and straightened and, you know, forced into being something it's not, forced into being straight. And so in that way, I think I was also forced into being something I'm not. When I was 18, first year in university, I got a little bit of freedom, and I mean, I didn't really have time to straighten my hair because there were so many classes. And so that was the first time I was like, okay, I'll just, you know, go without straightening it. And people were telling me like, your hair is beautiful. And then I was like, oh, maybe it is. Like, it doesn't have to be straight to be beautiful. And then coming back home and, you know, the colored community being like, oh, you look like a lion or whatever. Like being called, even like through primary school, like you get called boskop or kruskop or, you know, busman, whatever. Which, by the way, like, busman is not necessarily a bad thing. That's our ancestors, but okay. But yeah, I think my hair also ties me, like, to my ancestry and shows that part of me that is part of South Africa that makes me originally South African. Yeah, so when I was 18, I was like, I'm gonna wear my hair natural. And then from there, I like learned to take care of my hair in its natural form. And then I started writing about it on Facebook or Instagram, and people started resonating with it. And people started asking me for advice to take care of their own hair and telling me that I inspired them to wear their hair natural, and saying like they realized that the trauma they went through of having to condition their hair to be straight. So that was like really important. Or something that I reflect on now is like, it was my story, but somehow my story affected a lot of people around me and changed their minds also, and helped them connect with their identity of their.
That's cool.
Yeah.
From what you were speaking about, I assume it was like older people who were maybe, I don't know if it's parents or family or whatever, who were telling you, you must relax your hair, you must wear it a certain way. And it's maybe also important to acknowledge that that came from the historical pencil test and stuff, just to name it as well, where it would be like your hair must be relaxed because if you put a pencil in, that pencil must come out the first time. So obviously if it's straighter, there's more of a chance. I have natural curls as well, so my pencil would get stuck in there. So I even had, when I was growing up, my dad was like, cut your hair short, or there was always many stories. Sometimes people thought I was a girl because I had long hair. That's funny. Looking at those stories, but then looking how you as an individual, it's actually really significant. I just wanted to to highlight it. You as an individual, through whatever processing you're doing and stuff, has now decided, you know what, I'm actually going to reject those former mindsets. Even if people had it, even if parents or whoever it is like meant it for good, and the advice they gave me, it wasn't necessarily coming from a vindictive place, because that's the world they grew up in, you know. But you actually interrogating that and being like, actually no, if I look like a lion, yeah, lions are beautiful. Lioness would do the things, you know. There's even a story with that. I just wanted to actually add it, that, you know, even the word kham, that comes from the indigenous. There was a San people, it's with like an exclamation mark, XAM, I don't know exactly how to remember, like kham, something like that, and that's actually where that word comes from. And believe it or not, that term, it means people of the lion, because there used to be black lions in the Cape. Black, like a lion that was all black. They used to exist in the Cape, and the kham people, where that term, what the term has now become, actually came from there. Now people use kham. Now your hair looks kham, as if it's like a negative thing. But this is what I was talking about. No, we're reclaiming heritage, reclaiming stories, of some truth telling, you know, in that. Sorry, that's just as an aside, but I just wanted to get back to what I was saying. For you as an individual to now say, actually, no, I'm not actually interested in the former imaginations, and for you to say, just for myself, I'm going to do things in my own way, I'm going to process that, put it out on Facebook, just processing whatever, and then for other people to come alongside and see that and to be like, yeah, you know, you inspired me to do the same thing. Like, that's beautiful. It's actually like also revolutionary in a way, because we're changing systems, so now maybe in 50 years time, if you mention this to the future generations, they may look at us and be like, what are you talking about? We didn't even have those issues. We don't even,
and that's a good thing. And
which is amazing, because now we're changing the world. You know.
Yeah, and back then, that was 2017. Like, wearing your hair afro or curly wasn't a thing, but now I see it so often. Like, and I'm like, wow, yes.
Beautiful, really cool.
As a child, it is only natural to look at the world and let it surround you. You allow the world to roll down your face. You let it sink deeper into your skin as it consumes your entire being.
Stuck between who I was and who I am yet to be, I walk a journey of uncertainty, unaware of the destination or the path direction. I hope that I am not lost.
As you continue to watch the world filled with distraction and disruption, it feels easier to be compressed into nothing. I don't want to occupy any space. I'm fragile and I perform stability.
Who am I beyond time? My values, my goals, my achievements, a soul, body or mind? I wander restlessly as I grapple with my identity. I look into the world for some form of guidance, but I am met with an unfair reality.
The world constantly brings me to my knees. It brings everyone and everything to its breaking point.
But that is not the narrative I want.
I am depleted but not defeated. I'm ready to fight, to love radically, to revolt, to change.
To rewrite, to make a difference in my own capacity. To love, to give freely, to be compassionate, to be the change I want to see. And while I don't know where I'm headed, I know what I can do now. So I continue, despite the confusion, to serve selflessly.
We've spoken about a lot of things now, but one thing we haven't spoken about was this line from a song by Immortal Technique that I keep quoting always.
Love him.
But I think it's also it's probably the same kind of theme as Black Consciousness, but in that rap talk song he does the poverty of philosophy. He says, my revolution is born out of love for my people, not hatred for others. And I think Taahirah spoke about revolutionary love as a
Mm.
motivating thing, like a motivating thing, or a way of being, or something that makes you do the work, because people don't have to do what you're doing, right? They can carry on and just try and numb the pain of suffering, or just carry on and not care. But it seems like the two of you have a level of care that's there, and maybe we could explore that briefly, like what is revolutionary love?
An overarching value of mine has been helping others and being compassionate. And I think that comes from a sense of love. And yeah, I don't carry any of it. And I think for most people, love is transactional, right? Like, I do for you, you do for me. Even when you're learning it in academics, like these academics, mostly Westerners, by the way, historically, they are like, love is transactional, communication is transactional. And for me, I don't see it that way. Like, I love you regardless of anything. And everything I do is an act of love, not only for others, but also for myself. So it's with that love that I want to navigate my world, and being conscious, to be compassionate, to be kind. So that is why I do these things, and why I would sacrifice my time, myself, whatever it may be, and why I still put myself out there in terms of my writing or whatever. It's all because of this love, like giving back. But I never want anything in return. There's never this need of asking them something. I just do it because I feel like it's important to help people, and because of this love that I have, this universal revolutionary love. Yeah.
I just want to add something about not expecting anything back. I think this imagination that I have is that when we do this like unconditional and revolutionary love, it is like that everyone is acting out of compassion. Because if we look at the two of us, unconditionally she'll be there for me, and the same for me. Like, I'll be there for her. Because we are human, and so sometimes it can feel like we're not being recognized for the things that we do, because sometimes it is a lot on your body, and we recognize that also. But it's also like you need to, like, in this whole thing, it's not an exchange as like transactional, but it's an exchange in like energy and like love, like that feeling, that aura.
Like, the goal is that everyone with revolutionary
love revolutionary. Yeah, because it's like, yeah, I guess
tongue twister.
Yeah, I think it's more an aspiration, but also what we live by.
It's the dream. Like, everyone would live with love and live with compassion. Unfortunately, that's not the reality right now. But I think we do also obviously need love. We can give it, but we do also need it, and it's not necessarily transactional, but we do need that.
Yeah.
That is just being a human.
Yeah, like, we also need to be taken care of like we take care of others. I think that's the thing, is what I'm trying to say, is that everyone will be there for each other.
So it's almost like this idea that the revolutionary love has to be in community together. They not a forced reciprocation or an expected thing. Which is back to Rashid's idea about the garden, the shared garden. Which I think we spoke about a while back, maybe, if we did it all.
In the pre-recording we did, yeah. It's the acknowledgement that like the earth is a shared garden. Yeah. That's what I think. And the cosmos is a shared cosmos as well. Because I think sometimes we often focused on me, myself and I, or sometimes even me and my people. But then I always think about things like liberation. It has to be collective. And there needs to be that revolutionary love. I guess the dream would be in the entire cosmos, but a beautiful starting point is our homes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think even like we are trying to do that and trying to build like traditions that employ or that brings about togetherness and community. You know, it brings about a certain feeling in your heart and like that togetherness. And so, yeah.
I want to add something, but it's like a sidebar. I think there's also hard parts to revolutionary love where we also have to call out acts of hate in like what we see, and especially in like the elders, like the grandparents and grand aunts or whatever. but that because they do often have hateful remarks, and so I think part of that revolutionary love, because you know that it's going to hurt someone else as well, so you have to call it out so that it doesn't hurt the next person, because again, that is that love like going through.
It's an interesting thing, especially like the age, I guess, dynamics, because they obviously, we must all respect our elders, and that's an important thing, but I guess looking at what does that respect look like, particularly if it's cultural thing, it could be cultural / religious, sometimes even hierarchies, to be honest, or things like that. But looking at that and then trying to like push back against that in a respectful, loving way. I guess the starting point for that would probably be acknowledging like the harm. And being like, I'm not being sensitive with this, but this thing, this cultural thing, whether it's been here for 10 years or for 100 years, it's actually harmful. It's actually harmful towards, for example, maybe for you, towards young women or something like that.
Another thing that I want to say is like, when people say something harmful, but they're talking about other people, but you have the exact same like body or maybe hair, and they just like, no, it's not you, it's that person. Because like I've had people also like cousins and stuff say like, oh, like you're this guy, he's so fat, but not like you, like, you know, like what are you saying, bro? It's literally me, like, you know, so it's like
not like you.
Like that's the thing where it's like it's hurtful, but you have to
it's like, why are you feeling upset? No one's
like I'm not
about
talking
you.
about you.
I didn't
You're
say
right.
your
You're okay, fat.
You're okay.
That's it.
Crazy.
Okay, we got to end on a hopeful note.
Also, I was just wanted to say that you were like saying like, oh, we were like very like down or whatever. Like our talks were very dark, and then you were like, oh, I'm gonna quote Immortal Technique, which is also known for not having very happy lyrics sometimes.
This is a liminal space between everything.
I think it's important though to like, if you imagine a space that is better, you have to criticize the problems that is there now. Because if there's any way we're gonna fix it, we have to critically think about what's happening now and think about the realities of now, because we want to imagine a better place.
Yeah, I guess the question is about where are the spaces where we can hold both.
Yeah.
Where we can because sometimes I think in our individual capacities, we can be prone to one or the other.
Yes.
It's very hard to in ourselves hold both things. We can become better at it, I think. We can practice being there, which hopefully we're doing on the podcast. But within our own bodies as well, that's difficult.
I think you're right, because even this step into like learning about my culture and this application stuff, because it does bring joy. Because when I began being critical of the world, it was really negative and like being like angry towards white people and colonialism and stuff like that. I think also that's where the love, the revolutionary love comes from, because it's a positive thing. It's like, how can I better my world and the people around me?
With
community.
With me, it's also the story. Like I said, the stories that ground me. It's hopeful stories. It's ordinary people doing extraordinary things, or like showing revolutionary love. So that's where I balance it. Is like, I don't only see the harmful realities, I do also see the good, and I battle with this like, humans, and then like, oh my word, wow, humans. Like, we're so cool, but then it's like, so there's constantly this conflict between, humanity being amazing and humanity also not being that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. That was great.
So teach us about yeet.
Yeet.
And the old people who
we
listen
should
to the
actually
podcast.
we should do the do it.
We recording.
We should do the do it. Yeet, yeet, skirt, skirt.
I don't know that.
You
Okay.
see, you showing your age.
Okay, how about this? Okay, how about this as a nice ending for the podcast, right? So Tristan wants positive, hopeful
Okay.
stuff, right? What about teaching us about yeet, but using it in like a frame, like a phrase or something that is like a positive thing. So
That's
it could
all
be like
you, bro.
yeeting the negative. I don't know. So
Don't
like,
use it.
Colonialism.
now you see now so maybe first just explain to us old people what
You need
yeet
to.
means.
I don't know what
No,
yeet
I don't think
means.
anybody uses that term. Like,
Yeet, girl,
unironically, it's a meme. It's a joke. It's not serious. People don't use it in conversation.
But now we'll try it now.
Wait.
It's so cringe. But
No.
anyway.
So what does it mean? You said it means like throwing, like you
Yeah,
throw
like
something away.
throwing something or like something. How do I explain this? Like also if you like fly, like if you flew across the room, like you've been yeeted.
You've been yeeted.
So we must yeeted colonialism.
Yeah, we can
Yeet
yeet
them.
colonialism and harmful mindsets.
Nah,
Yeah.
there
Yeah, definitely.
Hashtag yeet.
you go. Hashtag yeet.
Oh my
Hashtag
gosh.
yeet colonialism. Yeah.